hello, howdy, and hi. Shabbat shalom, brethren. To all the goy and the goyim, to all the people out there that are searching and seeking the truth. Today I want to talk about the term you're going to hear quite a bit when you come into this and you try to tell other people about it. And it's, well, I speak English. And although that is what we've been told, it's not technically true. The first time I found out that the Father's name, the Yod, He, Wah, He, meant behold the nail, behold the hand, and that's just a surface level meaning of those letters, I was amazed. And from that point on, I understood that Hebrew conveyed to me something that this language, this Anglo-Saxonized Germanic language that we speak today, that we call English, could never convey. And the more I dug into his word, and the more I saw it, the more I understood. Without the Hebrew, you miss so much. Scripture tells us that it is to the honor and the esteem of Yahuwah. It is his esteem to hide a matter. But for a sovereign, for one who is in charge, and even to us, the brethren out here, he says, do you not know you are Elohims? In other words, sovereigns. He says that it is to our honor to search a matter out. And where does he hide it? He hides it in the very spelling, and he hides it in the words and the root words. He hides it in the very letters. So today, let's look at a word that should be pretty simple for us. And it's Shama, which is translated in our language as hear, but it means so much more. Again, this is just a surface level. I'm not going to get deep into the letters and the roots and everything else, but maybe another time. All right, so, okay. As you see here, I'm going to start off with a quote from Thomas Aquinas. The one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible. Now in here, faith, the Hebrew word for faith is emunah. And that is to support, confirm, or be faithful, to uphold, nourish, be steadfast and unwavering, foster, or father. And it's always tied to an action. In other words, your faith is always tied to what you do. It's not just a belief, but it is what you do with that belief, that action that comes of that belief. So here, what he is saying is, to one who is steadfast and unwavering, in whom and what they have faith in, you don't have to explain or convince them, for they will see it in their hearts and they will rejoice. And for those who have no true faith, that which shows in their actions, you can never convince them. They can't hear, listen, and do. Shema. So let's go into what hear in this language is, and see that it is not, in fact, an English word. This language is not very old. To hear in our language means to perceive by the ear. Didn't you hear the doorbell? To learn of by the ear, being told or be informed of, to hear news. To listen to, give or pay attention to. They refuse to hear our side of the argument. It's Old English, or Angling, Herion, Haran, Haran, West Saxon, to hear, perceived by the ear, listen to, from Proto-Germanic Hasjanan of Old Norse, Hera, Old Frisian, Hera, Hora, Dutch, Horin, German, Horen, Gothic, Hasjan, or it's Hausjan, because there's no J sound, to hear, from pi, root, kus, to hear, also from the Greek kohen, to mark, perceive, hear. Or it's all about the acoustics in our language. It's about to perceive a noise or hear a noise. It's got almost nothing to do at all with what that word means in Hebrew. Hebrew, we see a shin, a mem, and an ayin, as you see here, going from right to left. And that is Shema. And it's a primitive root to hear intelligently, with implication of attention, obedience, to listen to, yield to attentively. In other words, you're going to yield to whatever you hear attentively. call and gather together, to carefully, certainly consent or consider, be content, declare, diligently discern, give ear, cause to let, make, to hear, or indeed. Now that word indeed, we often say that word and we don't really, indeed, in action. So whatever we hear, we do indeed in our actions. We listen, we make, we be obedient or obey, we perceive or make a proclamation or to proclaim, publish, regard, report, show forth, surely, tell, understand, whosoever hears, witness. Much different than what we've been told. Now, we often know the Shema, and here's what it says in Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 5. Yours might be different. It says, hear, O Yisrael, Yahuwah Elohim and Yahuwah are united. Now, yours might say our and is in there, but it does not exist in Hebrew, which you'll see down below. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being and with all your might. Okay, so here, again, reading the Hebrew, here, Shema, see the word? Same word as is up here. Shema, Shema, O Yisrael, Yahuwah, Elohim, Yahuwah, and Yahuwah are united or one. Isn't that amazing? So hearing is Shema, and plug that into here. To listen to it with intention, to obey, to yield to proclaim, to perceive and make a proclamation, to report and show forth in our actions. It is always an action. In Devarim or Deuteronomy 29 and 4, it says, but Yahuwah has not given you a heart to know and the eyes to see and the ears to hear till this day. And again, we see in the hear is again Shema, to hear, listen, and do. You can hear a noise and not be listening to it. There are dogs barking out there. I hear them. I couldn't tell you what kind of dog it is or where it's coming from, but I hear it, but I'm not listening to it. And Yashayahu or Isaiah 6, 9 through 10, and he said, go and you shall say to the people, hearing you hear but do not understand, and seeing you see but do not know. Make the heart of this people fat and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart, and shall turn and be healed. Okay, so in each place he's saying, and you shall hearing you hear but do not understand, and seeing you see but do not know. In other words, he's saying, you're doing this, but you have no understanding. And that's what he says, get wisdom, get knowledge. You can get the knowledge, but in all you're getting, get understanding. So that's what he's telling us right here. And again, as we go down here, we see what? The same thing, hearing. So hearing is shamar. It is shin, mem, ayin, resh. So that is to shamar, which is to hear and do. Hear, again, shema. So, and we see down here, when he talks about with the ears, it's all related to hearing, understanding, and acting upon it, doing. We see again, it is Shema. So, let's go into, real quick, the fact that people say, but I speak English. Well, here's a little short history of English. It's a short origins and development of the English language. The historical language of the English language really started at the arrival of 3 Germanic tribes who invaded Britain during the 5th century AD. These tribes, the Angles or the Anglians, the Saxons, and the Utes crossed the North Sea from today is Denmark and North Germany. At the time, the inhabitants of Britain spoke Celtic language, but most of the Celtic speakers were pushed west and north by the invaders, mainly into now what is Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. The Angles came from England, and their language was called Englisk, in which words England and English are derived. Now we see this is where they came from, and this is how they came. That was 450 to 1100 AD. The invading Germanic tribes spoke similar language, which Britain developed into what we now call Old English and did not sound or look like English today. Native English speakers now would have very great difficulty understanding Old English. Nevertheless, about half of most of the commonly used words in modern English have Old English roots. The words be strong and water, for example, derive from Old English. Old English was spoken until about 1100. This is Old English. Pet pigard. Read any of the rest of that and tell me you understand one word on that. One word. You can't. That's one of the original language. Looks nothing like what we speak today. And by the way, that language is not very old, is it? 450 to 500 when it came to be this language, not ours. Middle English was 1100 to 1500. The Duke of Normandy and part of modern France invaded and conquered England. The new conquerors, called the Normans, brought with them a kind of French, which became a language of the royal court and the ruling of the business classes. For a period, there was a kind of linguistic class division where the lower class spoke English, this particular language, and the upper classes spoke French. In the 14th century, English became the dominant in Britain again, but many French words were added. This language is called Middle English. It was the language of the great poet Saussure, and then 1340 to 1400, but it would still be difficult for native English speakers to understand today. This is it. And when I saw him would never find to redden this cursed book a night, and again, you could probably put it together after you read it enough times, but you see, it's completely different than what we speak in modern English. And that's from 1500 to 1800. Towards the end of Middle English, a sudden distinct change of pronunciation, the greater vowel shift started, and vowels being pronounced shorter and shorter from the 16th century. Thus, the Renaissance of classical learning meant that many new words and phrases entered the language. The invention of printing meant there had to be now a common language in print. Books became cheaper and more people learned to read. Printing also brought standardization to English spelling and grammar. It became fixed in a dialect in London, where most published houses became standard. In 1604, the first English dictionary was published. Late modern English, this is the language we speak today. 1800, okay, is a vocabulary. Late modern. It has more words arising from two principal factors. Firstly, industrial revolution, technology created for new words. So you see that most of our language is tied to secularism. There are many varieties of the language, but we see that the earliest language, this language is not very old. The oldest relative of this language is not very old. So there's a Spanish influence, there's a French influence, there's a Hebrew influence, there's a Latin influence, there's even some West African words that are influenced in the English. And technology and worldlyism, secularism has greatly influenced our language. Today it is particularly influential due to U.S. dominance of cinema, television, popular music, trade, and technology, including the internet. But there are many other varieties of English around the world, including Australian English, New Zealand English, Canadian English, South African English, Indian English, and Caribbean English. So let's see. But I speak, let's put it this way, but I speak cinema, television, popular music, trade, and technology. I speak secular worldlyism. But you don't want to learn our Father's language? Shaul wrote in 1 Corinthians 11 and 18, he said that there are factions, that he hears there are factions that when we come together, that we do not come together for what is righteous, but for what is unrighteous. And he says, and partly I believe this is true. But he also says that these things must happen, that these divisions and these factions that are arising within the group must happen so that the approved ones, because you have to study to show yourself approved. What are you studying? Torah. You have to study the Torah because the Messiah is the Torah. You have to study the Torah to show yourself approved. You don't turn or waver from right to left. And he says this way, when these people who bring these factions in, the approved ones, the ones that Yahuwah approves of because they're bringing forth his word, his Torah, no other teaching will do. You can't turn to the right or the left. You can't take it from anywhere else. It's the Torah. If you're not following Torah, you're not following Yah. So he tells us very clearly this is what we're doing. And he tells us these things must happen. We're not going to know who the approved ones are if we don't know who the disapproved ones are. So when this happens, count it all joy. Be happy. Be glad in it. Rejoice. Be jubilant. Well, anyways, guys, that's it for now. And that, like, again, that was just very short and simple. The word Shama says way more than the word hear. To perceive a sound is not the same as to stop what you're doing, pay attention, listen intently for the purpose of heeding, doing, proclaiming, and being obedient. Way different. Our language cannot express what Hebrew expresses. Just one word. It's just one. We love you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, guys. And that'll be it for today. Shabbat Shalom.